Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going over my rankings for the rookies and sophomore drafts over on Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is the sponsor of today's video, and I will be talking about them in a little bit more depth a little bit later on in the video. In the rookies and sophomore drafts, you can only draft players, you guessed it, who are rookies this season. They'll become rookies during the 2022 NFL draft, as well as drafting the players that are sophomores. Their second year in the NFL, they were drafted in the 2021 NFL draft. These drafts have a widely different strategy compared to your normal redraft fantasy football drafts, compared to your normal even best ball fantasy football draft. So in today's video, we're going to be going over the top 20 ranked rookies and sophomores in my opinion. But before we get on into things, I would like to ask, if you are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, to please make sure that you do hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you hit a like on today's video. And if you would like to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. So without further ado, let's get into my top 20 rankings for rookies and sophomores. For the rookies and sophomores best ball draft, this video will also give you, if you are not playing in these best ball drafts, will just give you a good idea on my opinion of these players going into the 2022 fantasy football season. So we begin at number 1, and at number 1, there's basically two ways you could go. You could either go with Jamar Chase, wide receiver of the Cincinnati Bengals, or you can go with Naji Harris, running back of the Pittsburgh Steelers. To me, it's either you want to get the wide receiver or the running back out of the way, depending on how you look at 2022 best ball drafts in this certain game mode of rookies and sophomores. For me, number 1 is going to be Jamar Chase. In 2021, he had 128 targets, 7.5 per game, ranking 17th at wide receiver, 81 receptions, 4.8 per game, ranking 18th at wide receiver, 1,455 receiving yards, 85.6 per game, ranking number 4th at wide receiver, and 13 total tugs, 4th at the wide receiver position. Last year, Jamar Chase had me completely and utterly fucking bamboozled. I was led astray by all of the news talking about how this guy cannot see an NFL football, that he needs those white stripes that are on the side of the NCAA football to see the ball. It seemed like everything was just going to go completely wrong for Jamar Chase. The reports out of training camp weren't good. In preseason, he didn't look great. I was thinking, you know what? Maybe there's actual rust. He didn't play in the 2020 college football season. They won the Natty in 2019. He takes the year off for COVID. And then 2021, I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe he starts off the season a little cold. Maybe he's a little rusty. Maybe it takes 4 or 5 games for him to get going. And then in week number 1, this man lays the hammer down. And ever since week 1, the man was so dominant in terms of fantasy football. He's my number 1 wide receivers in rookies and sophomore drafts. But it wouldn't even surprise me if he finished as the number 1 wide receiver in 2022 as a whole. I love Jamar Chase. Obviously, Joe Burrow is a great quarterback. Will this team end up making it all the way back to the Super Bowl, have a triumphant playoff run like they did last year? Maybe, maybe not, but hey, that doesn't even really matter for fantasy football. Jamar Chase is the clear number 1 wide receiver on the team. They're still going to use T. Higgins. They're still going to use Tyler Boyd. They're still going to run the ball. They got rid of CJ Uzama. Maybe that has a slight push up for Jamar Chase. Doesn't really fucking matter at all to me. I love Jamar Chase, my number 1 overall player. At number 2, we got Naji Harris, because obviously if it's going to be a battle at number 1 between Jamar Chase and Naji Harris, if I have Jamar Chase at number 1, then Naji Harris is going to be my number 2 overall player. In 2021, in 17 games, he had 307 carries, 18.1 per game, ranking 2nd at running back, 1,200 rushing yards, 70.6 per game, ranking 4th at running back, 94 targets, 5.5 per game, ranking number 1 at running back, 74 receptions, 4.4 per game, number 1 at running back, 467 receiving yards, number 3 at running back, and 10 total touchdowns, number 8 at the running back position. So when it came to Naji Harris last year, when I was looking at these stats initially, I was very surprised that Naji Harris was this dominant in terms of targets, receptions, receiving yards, all of that in the receiving game. Because when you think of who is the best receiving running back in the NFL, not a single person, maybe you are, right? Maybe you're a Steelers fan, or maybe you already knew this, is thinking Naji Harris, right? But maybe that's correct, right? Because he isn't really the best receiving running back, but he's going to be seeing a lot of targets regardless of who the quarterback is going to be in 2022. I understand that they signed Mr. Kiss and Titties Mitchell Trubisky, but it seems like he's going to be the bridge quarterback. He's going to come in, maybe he plays a couple of games, then maybe they throw a new quarterback in, or maybe he plays for the whole season. That's kind of up in the air at this point, but I think Naji Harris will be just fine in that situation. He's the clear lead dog, the bell cow in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh loves to use, Mike Tomlin loves to use that bell cow running back, and I think Naji Harris is going to continue to be that in 2022. He was an excellent running back last year, so even if he puts up similar numbers last year, you are going to be very happy when it comes to drafting Naji Harris. At number 3, we have Trey Lance, quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers. In 2021, he played in 6 games, having just 2 starts, though. The biggest pushback on Naji Harris that I could see right now is the fact that there are rumors flying everywhere. Where is Deshaun Watson going to go? People are talking about the Saints, Carolina. They're talking about the Falcons. They're talking about the Browns. And then yesterday, it comes out that maybe he's going to go to San Francisco. And in your head, you're thinking, that makes no sense. They just drafted Trey Lance. They're going to get rid of Mr. Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy Guap, Jimmy G spot, and then it's going to be Trey Lance season. But looking at that does have me slightly worried. Now, obviously, Deshaun Watson, I don't think he's going to be a 49er, but that is something to monitor, obviously, because if Deshaun Watson's a 49er, then that means that the quarterback of the Houston Texans is going to be Trey Lance, and that seems like a disaster scenario for Trey Lance if you're taking him 3rd overall. In 2021, again, 6 games, 2 starts, 71 attempts, passing the football, 603 passing yards, 57.7% completion percentage, 5 passing touchdowns, 2 INTs, 38 rushes for 168 yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. What you're looking at in fantasy football is you're not necessarily looking at who's the best quarterback in the NFL, because a lot of the time, the guy who is the best quarterback in the NFL is not the best quarterback in fantasy football. In fantasy football, you're looking for these rushing quarterbacks. They are just so overpowered in terms of fantasy football. In most leagues, it's 4 points to throw a touchdown for a quarterback. But you run one in, you get 2 extra points because that's 6 points for rushing touchdowns, 6 points for receiving touchdowns. So you get a bonus doing that at the quarterback position. You run for 10 yards, you get 1 point. You pass for 25 yards, and you get 1 point. So in fantasy football, the rushing quarterback is very much overpowered, and that's not just to say that Trey Lance is only good at running. Obviously, he's a solid passing quarterback as well, but you can easily make the argument that Trey Lance is like Jalen Hurts last year, where when you're watching the games, you're not just sitting there just salivating like, holy shit, look how good that Jalen Hurts is. But at the end of the season, you're like, wow, look how good Jalen Hurts was for my fantasy football team. So that's kind of my thought process on that. At number 4, we move to my guy, Jalen Waddle, wide receiver of the Miami Dolphins. 2021 stats, playing in 16 games, 142 targets, 8.9 per game, ranking 10th at wide receiver, 104 receptions, 6.5 per game, ranking 7th at wide receiver, 1,015 receiving yards, 63.4 per game, ranking 22nd at wide receiver, and he had 7 total touchdowns, ranking 18th at the wide receiver position. Last year, Jalen Waddle was fucking phenomenal. Going into the year, I didn't question necessarily why the Dolphins took him, right? I understand, we need a wide receiver, but I was a little bit worried about how involved is he going to get, right? We got Devontae Parker, we got Will Fuller, we have Preston Williams, we have these other wide receivers. Obviously, Jalen Waddle is better than those guys, but will he be able to be given that chance? And especially with the defensive-minded head coach, I wasn't sure that Jalen Waddle fared all that well in his rookie year. I liked them late in drafts, but I wasn't telling you guys to must draft. You must draft Jalen Waddle, and that was wrong because Jalen Waddle was fantastic. Chef's kiss, magnifique. Going into 2022, they get rid of B-Flow, and they bring in Mike McDaniel, an offensive-minded head coach, a guy who can turn Jalen Waddle into a Deebo Samuel-esque wide receiver. And I don't mean put up Deebo Samuel numbers, but what I mean is that we could see Jalen Waddle running the ball more, utilized more as an athlete, and not necessarily just as a wide receiver. I mean, they're going to look to get him the ball in a lot better of situations, and I believe that the play calling is going to be 7 zillion times better for Jalen Waddle. I think Tua Tagovailoa is going to take the next step up. The Dolphins haven't necessarily done the best so far in free agency at signing offensive linemen, because our offensive line sucks donkey cock, but at the end of the day, anything's better than what we had last year, so bringing in one new guy, hopefully we get another new piece or maybe multiple new pieces, maybe we draft one. That's what I'm hoping for. Jalen Waddle, though, is my number 4 ranked rookie and sophomore player, but before we get on in to player number 5, I'd like to let you guys know about our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, and they are known for their NFL best ball tournaments. However, Underdog doesn't stop there. Underdog has plenty of other contests for you to compete in, including live draft contests as well as pick'ems that you guys can make up to 20 times your entry. Use promo code AWESEMO. Again, promo code AWESEMO. I'm pointing to it right now on the screen to get a first match deposit bonus of up to $100 and get started on Underdog Fantasy today. If you guys play NBA, anything like that, the pick 'em on there is awesome. It's awesome in the NFL season as well. And if you guys want to do a draft doing rookies and sophomores, you can go ahead and do that using my ranking. So at number 5, we move to Javonte Williams, running back of the Denver Broncos. And the reason why Javonte Williams is sitting at number 5 and probably not in consideration to be a top 3 pick for me is because the Denver Broncos have not yet pushed Melvin Gordon away. Which makes absolutely zero sense because basically everyone and their mother assumed that Melvin Gordon would be gone relatively soon. He's still there. Could he move? Of course. If he does move, then Javonte Williams will shoot up the board. And that's kind of the risk you take with drafting earlier compared to later. Same thing goes with the rookie players. A lot of these rookies are going very late in this draft. And if they land in the correct spot, you got an absolute steal where you get them. So that's kind of the difference or the comparison from drafting earlier now before the draft and drafting later and drafting right now when Melvin Gordon's still on the Broncos could be a huge steal if you get him pick 5, 6, or 7. But if Melvin Gordon doesn't leave, then that's going to be a huge kick to the dick if you have Javonte Williams. So Javonte Williams last year with Melvin Gordon, he had 203 carries, 15th at running back, 903 rushing yards, 13th at running back, 53 targets, 17th at running back, 43 receptions, 13th at running back, 316 receiving yards, 18th at running back, and 7 total touchdowns. So he still had a good season without Melvin Gordon, but the point I'm trying, or with Melvin Gordon, but the point I'm trying to push forward is that if Melvin Gordon is not there, Javonte Williams' upside is infinitely better, and he could easily be the best player, running back, wide receiver in this rookies and sophomores class. So that's why I kind of pushed him down the rankings because, again, if Melvin Gordon was not there, he could be dominant. Next up, we move to, only had 7 total touchdowns as well. I don't remember if I mentioned that. Next up, we move to Justin Fields, quarterback of the Chi-Town Bears, played in 12 games last year, 10 starts, 270 passing attempts, 1,870 passing yards, 58.9 completion percentage, 7 passing tugs, 10 interceptions, 72 rushes for 420 yards. Shout out to Snoop Dogg and 2 rushing touchdowns. So Justin Fields had an excellent, not an excellent season, but in maybe you could even call it an excellent situation based upon the shitty situation he was in. In reality, that's not a great rookie season, but Matt Nagy's a bit of a dunce. So now with a new head coach, I really think Justin Fields could start to get things done a little bit better. The defense definitely going to be worse without Khalil Mack. And you might argue, oh, Nick, that might be worse for Justin Fields. But in my opinion, that might even be better because that means that Justin Fields is going to be slinging the rock even more because the defense isn't going to be able to hold up. They're going to be down in games, slinging the rock. And that is a plus for Justin Fields. That would technically be a minus for David Montgomery because David Montgomery isn't necessarily this elite pass catcher. But again, not talking about David Montgomery here, we're talking about Justin Fields. The wide receiver room isn't excellent there, but his rushing ability does very much excite me in terms of his upside in 2022. I think Justin Fields is best when he's moving out of the pocket. Not saying that he's some shitty pocket passing quarterback, but just in my opinion, and that's the best in terms of fantasy football. So I like Justin Fields a decent amount. I just hope things get a little bit better in Chicago. At number 7, you could definitely argue that Trevor Lawrence, quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars, should be ahead of Justin Fields. You can make that argument because definitely the offense, at least in my opinion, is probably better in Jacksonville, but the rushing upside to me doesn't seem as prevalent in Trevor Lawrence's game. 602 passing attempts, 7th at quarterback, 3,641 passing yards, 17th at quarterback, 59.6 completion percentage, 12 passing touchdowns, which is terrible, 17 interceptions, and 2 rushing touchdowns. If you guys remember, there was a stretch of games during last season where this motherfucker didn't even throw a single touchdown. It was hilarious, but this is a much better Jacksonville team now. Even if they didn't make a single move, right? They added all these wide receivers. They got rid of DJ Chark. They bring in Christian Kirk. They bring in Evan Ingram, right? This is a better offense overall. But even if they didn't do any of that, and they just got rid of Urban Meyer and brought in Doug Peterson, I would be much more excited, and I'm very excited about the upside of Trevor Lawrence. You can definitely make that argument for 2022 to put Trevor Lawrence over Justin Fields, so I would understand that as well. Let me know down below in the comment section who you guys would prefer to have, whether that's in best ball or in redraft, Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence in 2022. I think that there is very clear a top tier at the quarterback position in these drafts, that being Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Trevor Lawrence, and then after that, my excitement isn't as high right now because we don't necessarily know where these quarterbacks are going to go in the 2022 NFL draft. So next up, we move to Breece Hall, running back, rookie running back, so he's a free agent right now, of the Iowa State. I don't even think they call themselves that. Only the Ohio State calls himself that, but Iowa State, back-to-back 1,400 plus yard seasons with over 20 touchdowns. Has some pass catching abilities, not necessarily excellent, not going to be the next Christian McCaffrey or something, but can catch the ball, doesn't have stone hands, and ran a 4.39 40-yard dash. All great to hear, all fine and dandy. So if he lands in a situation where he can be the workhorse running back, he's probably going to elevate himself up these rankings. Next up at number 9, we got the first tight end and the only tight end in my rankings, and that's Kyle Pitts. 2021 stats, 17 games, 110 targets, 6.5 per game, ranking 5th at tight end, 68 receptions, one off of being very nice, I like, with 69, 4.0 per game, 7th at tight end, 1,026 receiving yards, 60.4 per game, ranking 3rd at tight end, 1 total touchdown, not so hot. The only touchdown he scored in America was during the Pro Bowl. The other touchdown he scored was in London up against the Jumbo Jets. For Kyle Pitts, this situation could drastically change in the next couple of days. Kyle Pitts' quarterback right now is Matt Ryan. Doesn't seem as though that's locked and loaded in 2022. Maybe they get Deshaun Watson. Maybe they have a different quarterback in 2022. They don't have Calvin Ridley. They don't have Russell Gage anymore. He's in Tampa Bay. So this is a very open scenario where Kyle Pitts might see 180 targets. He's basically a wide receiver at the tight end position. So in this kind of a draft, you don't need a tight end, though, because it's wide receiver / tight end, but I still do like Kyle Pitts a ton. At number 10, we've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver of the Detroit Lions. In 2021, he played in 17 games, but only had 9 starts. He had 119 targets, 7.0 per game, ranking 23rd at wide receiver, 90 receptions, 13th at wide receiver, 912 receiving yards, 27th at wide receiver, and 6 total touchdowns. A lot of people started to panic. They started to wet themselves a little bit because they're thinking that, Nick, DJ Chark is there now. That's going to completely ruin Amon-Ra St. Brown. I don't think so. What would ruin Amon-Ra St. Brown is them drafting a wide receiver in the first round that is a legitimate alpha and isn't the 1A, 1B with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown's targets per game is probably not going to be averaging what he was averaging towards the end of the season, where he's getting like 8, 9, 10 plus targets a game. But he is still going to be a main piece in this offense. And even if the Lions don't have this elite step up, which you just can't project, Amon-Ra St. Brown should still be pretty solid. At number 11, we have Devonta Smith, wide receiver of the Eagles. 17 games played in 2021. 103 targets, 6.1 per game, ranking 32nd at wide receiver. 64 receptions, 3.8 per game, ranking 34th at wide receiver. 916 receiving yards, 53.9 per game, 26th at wide receiver. And 5 total touchdowns, 33 at wide receiver. Jalen Hurts, we talked about a little bit earlier. Great fantasy football quarterback. Not great for the value of Devonta Smith. The guy's fast as fuck, like Lightning McQueen. He's a good player. The question is, will he have this huge sophomore season? I'm not too sure about that. He is the clear big alpha dog there in Philadelphia, but Jalen Hurts isn't some elite quarterback. Now, fast forward to the season, and Deshaun Watson's their quarterback for maybe half the season, because you got to assume that he's going to be suspended. Maybe he won't be again. I don't know, just seems like he will be suspended. Then maybe Devonta Smith's value skyrockets. But if it's Jalen Hurts, I'm just not in love with Devonta Smith. Again, he's a fine player. He's going to be a guy that I will attack in best ball drafts, because he's the perfect example of kind of a best ball wide receiver, where he might have a bunch of shitty games, but then he'll have those big games where he potentially hangs 30 plus points. In a best ball format like this, though, where it's a smaller draft, I'm not as in love with Devonta Smith. He's a fine player, though. I definitely see the upside with him. Just not overall excited about him. That's why he's not in the top 10. At number 12, we have Elijah Mitchell, running back of the 49ers. 2021 stats, played in 11 games, 207 carries, 18.8 per game, ranking 13th at running back, 963 rushing yards, 87.5 per game, ranking 8th at running back, 20 targets, 1.8 per game, ranking 23rd at running back, 19 receptions, 1.7 per game, ranking 56th at running back, 137 receiving yards, 12.5 per game, ranking 57th at running back, and 6 total touchdowns, 27th at running back. So the problem with Elijah Mitchell has nothing to do with Elijah Mitchell. It has to do with the fact that I think that his rushing upside is going to potentially go down with Trey Lance running the ball more if he's the quarterback, assuming Watson isn't coming, right? And also, the 49ers just love to do a 360 every season, and magically, they use the hot hand approach. So, right, if Elijah Mitchell doesn't start off on fire, he might get switched out for another running back, and that's just kind of the 49ers way. Now, again, is Elijah Mitchell by far and away the best running back on this roster? Bar none, 100%. Mortal lock of the century that he's the best. The question is, will he be given the workload of the player caliber that he is? I'm just not too sure about that. So that's kind of where he's player 12. If I knew he was locked and loaded to get similar rushing value, receiving upside to last year, again, not some elite receiving running back, right? 20 targets, 19 receptions, 137 receiving yards. Sure, he might not be that, but he's still a great running back overall. He would probably be much higher on the rankings if I was for sure that Elijah Mitchell was going to be the lead back. Next up, we move to kind of the next tier at the quarterback position. We've got Zack Wilson, quarterback of the New York Jumbo Jets. In 2021, in his rookie campaign, Zack Wilson played in 13 games, had 383 passing attempts, 28th at quarterback, 2,334 passing yards, 30th at quarterback, 9 passing touchdowns, 11 INTs, 29 rushes for 185 yards, and 4 touchdowns. The Jets are also one of those teams that they're not going to take like this great leap, in my opinion. Now, they're not going to be like Humpty Dumpty off the wall and take a great fall. Like, they're not going to fall off the edge of the earth, but I don't personally think they're going to get much better from 2021 to 2022. Zack Wilson showed a lot of good. He also showed a lot of bad. But that bad was a lot at the beginning of the season, and it looked like things were getting better for Zack Wilson. So I don't want to undermine Zack Wilson, and the rushing value is certainly there for him. It's just not that he is thrown into the like the offensive line isn't amazing there, right? He's not in this great situation. Like, say, even the Jacksonville situation is better than the Jets for me. So Zack Wilson's fine. He was the second overall pick last year. So you're going to hope, if you're a Jets fan, you're hoping, you're praying to the football gods that he's good. And I think he could be. But ranking him up there with Fields, with Lawrence, seems a bit silly to me. At number 14, we have Mr. Mystic Mack Jones, quarterback of the New England Deflatriots. 2021 stats, played in all 17 games. He was quarterback 18 in fantasy football, 521 passing attempts, 14th at quarterback, 3,802 passing yards, 13th at quarterback, 22 passing touchdowns, 14th at quarterback, 13 INTs, 44 carries for 129 yards. He's much more of a statue quarterback. Mack Jones, when it comes to Mack Jones, he's just safe. He's basically, you Google safe quarterback, that's what you get in Mack Jones. You're never going to get Mack Jones to, there's no way, unless all the other guys ahead of him get hurt, knock on wood, that Mack Jones finishes as the number 1, the number 2, even a top 3 guy in this. Not that he's a bad player, but because he's not a fantasy football quarterback. He's a game manager. He's a guy that will win games for the Patriots. He's not going to fuck the game up for him, but he's not going to win the game. Put the team on his back. And when you have that in a quarterback for fantasy football, I just don't like it. I'm just not excited about getting quarterback 29 in points per game, right? I'm not excited about that. He's fine. He might take the next step up. Maybe he throws 20 instead of 22 passing touchdowns in 17 games. Maybe he throws 29. Great. That's great, but that's not going to be a top 10 quarterback. That's not going to be the best quarterback in rookie and sophomores. So that's why he's kind of all the way buried at the bottom of the quarterbacks from last year's draft class. Again, not a bad quarterback, just not great for fantasy football. Next up, we move to Travis Etienne at number 15, running back of the Jaguars. I don't even have anything written down about him. Got hurt last offseason. He's in a situation that is very fucking confusing. They have James Robinson. They have him. Travis Etienne is clearly the better receiving back. James Robinson is clearly the better running back, meaning like better at running in between the tackles, things like that. So this is going to be a bad situation unless they find a trade partner for James Robinson. So Etienne has some upside from receiving, could have some big games, but overall not a guy that I'm overwhelmingly excited to draft. At 16, we have Mr. Oh, fuck, I almost blanked on his name. Zack Wilson's number 1 receiver right now, Elijah Moore, wide receiver of the Jumbo Jets, 11 games played. He had 77 targets last year, 49th at wide receiver, 7.0 per game, 43 receptions, 3.9 per game, 58th at wide receiver, 538 receiving yards, number 61 at wide receiver, and 6 total touchdowns, 20th at wide receiver. They still have Corey Davis, for next season, and that scares me. Again, I think Elijah Moore, sorry, I almost said Elijah Mitchell. I already did say Elijah Mitchell, but you get what I'm saying. So Elijah Moore isn't a bad player, but the situation isn't amazing. Again, he might be the wide receiver 2 on the team. He might be the best receiver talent-wise, but he's in that number 2 situation, in my opinion. And again, there's just nothing exciting about Elijah Moore. Maybe I'm wrong, because a lot of people really fucking love Elijah Moore. They are going to bat for Elijah Moore. They are banging the drum aggressively. I just don't see it. Maybe I need to whip out a microscope to be able to see it correctly, but I just don't see it right now. So again, Elijah Moore is a fine player. You still have to be pretty solid to be ranked inside the top 20, but I'm just not... Again, I've said it like 50 times, but I'm just not overwhelmingly excited for Elijah Moore. At 17, I'm almost more excited for Kadarius Toney, who's number 17, wide receiver of the Giants. Problem is, the quarterback situation there is atrocious with Daniel. Daniel Jones is not good, and then they bring in Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor sucks, and some Giants fans think he's going to be the starter. If he's the starter, then man, oh man, things are going to be bad in New York. 2021, 10 games, 4 starts, 57 targets, 5.7 per game, ranking 80th at wide receiver, 39 receptions, 3.9 per game, 67 at wide receiver, 420 receiving yards, 42.0 per game, 84th at wide receiver, no touchdowns. And he has 1 fight win. You remember that fight against the Cowboys? Shout out to Kadarius Toney for some fun watching. It was fun to watch that. But at the end of the day, here we have a shitty quarterback scenario. We have by far and away the best wide receiver. The question has to be the coaching. How good is Brian Daboll as the head coach of the Giants? If he's great, then he's going to utilize Toney correctly. This offense is going to do a complete 180 compared to what it was with Joe Judge. And maybe that is the case. And the upside of Toney is very high. And while his stats are 420 yards, no touchdowns, that's not great. Him and Kenny Golladay scored 0 total touchdowns, but maybe in 2022, things are going to get a little bit better. At 18, we have Michael Cotta, running back of the Jets. 2021 stats, 14 games played, 147 carries, 32nd at running back, 639 rushing yards, 45.6 per game, 28th at running back, 55 targets, 15th at running back, 36 receptions, 29th at running back, 325 receiving yards, 17th at running back, and 4 total touchdowns. Michael Carter was one of the running backs that I did bang the drum for last year, super late in fantasy drafts. I was so excited about Michael Carter, and he didn't have a bad season. Wasn't great, but it was clear that the team realized that he's the best running back on the team, and they still have other running backs there, which worries me a little bit. But if Michael Carter really can prove in the offseason that he's the guy that they need to just stick with all season long, then I think Michael Carter has a ton of upside. Again, not the greatest offense, not the greatest offensive line, so that could deter his value, which kind of buries him down here. But I am still excited about the upside of Michael Carter. At number 19, we got Drake London, wide receiver, rookie, free agent, not on a team yet. But before we get on into that, I'd like to tell you guys again, make sure you check out Underdog Fantasy. Link down below in the description, promo code AWESOMO for up to a $100 deposit match bonus if you are new. Drake London, back on into the video, of the USC Trojans, like the condoms, over 1,000 receiving yards and 7 tugs last season. Just like Robert Kraft, he'd be impressed with over 7 tugs. He is, personally, my favorite wide receiver that I have watched in this rookie class. And if he lands in the right spot, he could potentially do big damage. Is he going to be like Jamar Chase and be that great? Probably not, but could be great. He did get hurt in 2021, so he did not run the 40, but it was reported recently that he will work out at USC's Pro Day, so that basically means that this is not going to be something that severely impacts him. I think Drake London, if he lands in the right spot again, could be really good if he's the number 1 or the number 2 guy. Closing in the top 20, we've got another quarterback. This is rookie quarterback of the Liberty Flames, Malik Willis. Some may be quick to dismiss a quarterback from Liberty because, hey, he's from Liberty. Who the fuck watches Liberty football? But Willis, to me, is the real deal. Passed for 2,857 yards and for 27 touchdowns and just 12 INTs in 2021. He also rushed for 878 yards and 13 touchdowns. There's a lot of talk about quarterbacks not necessarily being elite inside the first round, because there's no upper echelon at quarterback, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was picked inside the top 12. If he goes to Pittsburgh, that would be my ideal landing spot. Problem is, Trubisky's probably going to start at least a couple of games. So there we go. Top 20. Let me know if I was off. Maybe think, oh, Nick, you're a fucking idiot. You should have put Elijah Moore higher. You should have put X higher. You should have had maybe more rookies in here. Let me know down below in the comment section. I love you guys all so much. I hope you have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, goodbye.